पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिनी व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ओम शांति शांति शांति। श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम तत्सत्। Now we were doing the first chapter, fifth chapter of Panchadashi, and we have completed the introduction part, and from there on we will move. In the introduction, this is Mahavakya Viveka. We have had a good discussion in the introduction. Briefly, if I summarize in 3-4 words in order to remember everything, that it is Vairagya in itself is a foundation. Without Vairagya, one cannot do Vedanta Chintana. One cannot move towards moksha or liberation. That is a foundational thing, some sense of detachment. However, that alone will not lead us to liberation. That's a minimum condition, not a sufficient condition for getting Atmajnana. Therefore, one has to do Padartha Sodhana, needs to understand that which will trigger his liberation. But I am using these words like trigger, help, blah, blah, blah. Even if we know in Vedanta that Atmajnana is our Swarupa, so it's nothing to achieve but remove Pratibandhakas or the forces and factors that block a clear perception of our own nature. Therefore, we are doing Mahavakya Vichara. Why are they called Mahavakya? Also, we have done in the introduction. A few terms with which we have discussed them is Suvyaktata. Very well tells us about the nature of the Brahman. Jiva Brahma Aikyata, it explains. And then Susukshmata is very subtle. Therefore, why to do Vichara? We can just listen to it once and we can get the hint of it, the meaning, the import. No. It's very subtle. And then Sarva Vedantartha Sarabhutatva. It summarizes everything, it's summarized in a few words. And then Atyantika Nishriyasha, you see, Sapradarshana. He explains what Nishriyasa Pradarshana, that way to liberation, the pathway it shows. Without Atyantika Nishriyasa means there is nothing further than that. It gives you that pathway to realize it. And then most important is what is Ekavakyata. We know Ekavakyata in the Vedantic philosophy, in the Vedic theory of meaning, hermeneutics means Ekartha Pratipadakatvam. That it's not about use about one verb, but there's one subject, one predicate. That's not a sentence. Ekavakyata is what hints at a single injunction or gives one particular import. That's what is Ekavakya. And then finally, Sannyasa Purvaka Brahma Nishta Pravesanaya Anugyapa. It gives you Anugyapa Tri Tayatva. It gives you the knowledge to enter into that Brahma Bhava. This is how we entered into the discussion about the Mahavakyas. And there are 4 Mahavakyas. The first one we're going to discuss, we have started discussing, is Prajnanam Brahma, which is in the Aitariya Upanishad. And then we will go into Aham Brahmasmi, which is from the Yajurveda, Tattvamasi from Samaveda, I am Atma Brahma, that is from the Mandukya Upanishad, which is in the Atharva Veda. This one is Rig Veda. So first we'll discuss the Rig Vedic Mahavakya, then we will discuss the Yajurveda Mahavakya, then Samveda Mahavakya, and then Atharveda Mahavakya. And instead of the first mantra itself, as I had told you, that before we enter into, we will very quickly, I had made that promise, and where is that? Yeah, I will share this. Yeah, so here I'll remove this share and I'll add the other share. Yeah. So Prajnanam Brahma, it happens where this is the universally available base of the Sringari Mutt, Advaita Sarada Sringari Mutt. Koyam Atma iti vayam upasmahe. Katarah sa Atma yena va pasyati, yena va shrunoti, yena va gandhan adrigati, yena va vacham vyakaroti, yena va swadu cha aswadu cha vijanati. See, what happens is in the previous part of this Upanishad, there is some discussion about Vamadeva. And Vamadeva was already meditating on the supreme reality right in the womb of his mother. And he came out of the womb and said, Mother, there was some prarabdha, I was inside, now I'm out and I'm going. Now, in the context, there's a beautiful discussion about Vamadeva, his sadhana in the previous life, as a result of which, without doing Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, how can a person get liberation directly? That's what he got. And then, in that context, now there is a discussion amongst the brahmacharis, among the students in the ashram. And beautifully, Bhagavan Bhashyakara is capturing, I'll read it, but Koyam Atma iti vayam upasmahe. That is the question. Yam Atmanam Ayam Atma iti Shakshad Vayam Upasmahe. Kaha Saha Atma iti. Who is this Atma whom we should meditate on? Yang cha Atmanam Ayam Atma iti Sakshat Upasino Bhamadevaha Amritaha Sam Abhavat. Bhamadeva, by meditating on that Atma, he got that liberation. Tam eva vayam upasmahe konu khalu sa atma iti evam jigyasa purvam anyonyam pruchhatam. Therefore, the students are now having a kind of a dialogue between each other. Wo atma kaun hai? Who is that atma? Vamadevaji, meditating on it, got liberation. And these students are bright students and they want liberation themselves. अतिक्रांत विशेष विषय श्रुति संस्कार जनिता स्मृतिर अजायत तम प्रपदाभ्याम प्रापद्यत ब्रह्म इमं पुरुषम स एतम एव सीमानं विदार्य एतया द्वारा प्रापद्यत. There are two different Shruti Vakyas. Why is this question Koyam Atma? You see, in the government, there is a beautiful clause. It's also about red tape. The whole thing is whenever you want to take any action, there should be a cause of action. Now, if somebody raises a question, there has to be a reason as to why he's raising this question. In our context, if somebody raises in this Upanishad, we have this question. Bhashyakar is explaining what could be the cause of their doubt, why they are asking this question, who is that Atma. Alternative interpretations possible, because of which they were getting confused, because they must have read something. These are bright students. Therefore, he is asking, there are two Shruti Vakyas, Prapadabhyam Prapadyata Brahma Imam Purusham. See, there is one statement is saying that Brahman, sort of that supreme consciousness, enters into the human body-mind complex through feet. Yeah. Sa etam eva simanam vidarya etaya dvara prapadyata. And there is another statement which is saying that we have discussed that earlier, that he breaks that head because that soft place in the skull when a child is born, then he enters. Then there is somewhere else also mentions etena jivena pravishya. Through this jiva he enters into. That means there are two statements. There is one Purusha which comes from above, yeah, from the top of the head, the other one through the feet. So who is the real Purusha would be the question. That is why the students are getting confused. Edam eva Purusham dve brahmani itiritara pratikulyena pratipanne. So there is some question. Who are these two Purushas, that supreme consciousness which enters to the human body from the top and from down? Iti te cha asya pindasya atmabhute. And there, this Purusha is there, his Atmabhuta is part of us. Both these consciousnesses have entered us Tayor anyatara atma upasya bhavitum arhati. So anyatara means one of them. So there are two Purushas now have entered. So you see, this is called Adhyaropa Apavada Prakriya. First, we'll have a few hypothetical presumptions about how that Atma has entered us. Then we are asking Koso Atma, because ultimately Atma is one. The questioner, the object of the question, both are one only. But this is Adhyaropa. You will have some kind of a presumption and you will reject it. Like in algebra in school, we did, let's presume it's x. You get the value of the variable, you don't write x anymore. You write the variable. X is removed, apavada. Similarly, he's saying, Tayor anyatara atma upasya bhavitum arati. One of them is the upasya. Yo atra upasya, the one which is upasya here. Kataraha sa atma iti, which is that? The one who the Shruti says enters through the head, or the one who enters through the feet. But these are all stories. This is for the dull minds to make sense of what is it. Because dull mind is always finding Bheda easy to understand. The materially diverse reality easy to understand. It doesn't see the underlying unity of things. In order to explain the underlying unity of things, the Shriti Bhagavati, like a kind mother, it tells us stories and then says the stories are false. Ultimately, everything is one. योऽत्र उपास्यः कतरस आत्मा इति विशेष निर्धारणार्थं पुनः अन्योन्यम prapachchuhu vicharayantah. So they ask questions to each other. Do you know what is it? Let's have some discussion. Punaha tesham vicharayatam vishesha vicharana aspada vishaya matir avut. And then for their mind now is focused. Let's find out what is it. Katham, how? Dve vastuni asmin pinde upalabhyete. So these are what there are two consciousnesses who are entering into the same body mind complex, one through feet, the other one through the head. That is the question that's coming. Aneka bheda bhinnena karanena yeno upalabhate yasya eka upalabhate karanantara उपलब्धि विषय स्मृति प्रतिसंधानात् अनेक भेद भिन्नेन करणेन. We have lot of sense organs, 5 jnanendriyas, 5 karmendriyas, and then you also have the manabuddhi chitta ahankara, you have the antakarana. Aneka bheda bhinnena karanena yena upalabdhyate, by which we know anything. First thing we are doing vichara kohosvatma. But how do you know? Then you are talking about the ways in which we know things. Atma kaun hai, that is the doubt. Yasya eka upalabhati, and then the one who gets the knowledge using these means of knowledge. Karanantara upalabdhi vishaya smriti pratisandhanat. Because you see, sometimes you remember, sometimes you understand, sometimes you analyze, and you are not depending on any of the sense organs. So there is a superior center of the consciousness. What is that superior sense of consciousness? We have to make sense of it. And he's saying, Tatra na tavat yena upalabhate sa atma bhavitum arhati. The one with the help of which you know cannot be atma. There should be somebody who is knower. So in an office, there are some staff members. And there is a guy who is sitting who is the CEO of that company. It's a small boutique company, IT company, let's imagine. He's all the time busy doing lots of meetings. How does he take lunch? This guy is not married. He's a workaholic, sitting in the office from dawn to dusk or sometimes up to midnight. So if it's India, if it's not US, if it's India, then how does he take his breakfast, tea, whatever? There are people to give him. So there's somebody who brings tea for him. So this is your medicine time. So he would be having one or two guys who are helping him from morning to night. Yeah. They cannot be the boss. They are bringing things for the boss. Similarly, the sense organs we have, they are instruments for our knowing. They cannot be the knower. That's what I say. Tatra na tavat yena upalabhate, by which we know to get sa atma bhavitam arhati. That cannot be the boss. That cannot be atma. Kena punaha upalabhate iti, then by which we know. Uchyate, I shall explain to you. Yenava chakshur bhutena rupam pashyati. By which there must be a fundamental underlying faculty with which yenava chakshu bhutena rupam pashyati, and the eyes see, but there is an underlying consciousness. Eyes are there. If you are deep sleep, eyes see anything, no. Yenava shrunoti Shrota Bhutena Sabdam, and then some sound is apprehended. This is pop song, this is hip hop, this is, folk rock, this is rock, slow rock, all these kinds of things are there. The ear cannot distinguish, ear only listens, but there is somebody who decides and figures out what is what. Yenava Grana Bhutena Gandhan Ajrighati Ajigrati. So you smell it, this is sweet, this smells of sandalwood, this smells of some other, aromatic oil. There is some subjective faculty with which all these are possible. Yenava vak karnabhutina vacham namatmikam vyakorati. Sometimes you do onkara mantra ucharana, you give orders, you take a class, you explain things. Gaur aswa ityevam adyam. Then what? Sadhu asadhu iticha, and then, for example, there is some faculty with which you know he's a good guy, he's not so good guy, this is a cow, this is a horse. Yenava jiva bhutena swaducha aswaducha vijanati iti. And then there is this faculty with the help of which you now using the tongue, and you know this is very tasty, this is very yummy, and this is not so yummy. This is the first one. Koyam atma iti vayam upasmahe katara sa atma yena va pashyati yena va shrunoti yena va gandhan ajrigati yena va vacham vyakaroti yena va swaducha aswaducha vijanati. Now, this is the most important part, and now I will take you back to the first mantra, and that will set the tone for our progress. According to this is in the language of Vidyaranya Muni, he's taking the same thing and he's placing it here. Yena ikhyate shrunotidam jigrati vyakaroti cha swadu aswadu vijanati tat pragyanam utiritam. So Mahavakya is pragyanam Brahma. And he's saying that pragyanam word is taken from the Aitari Upanishad, the first 2-3 mantras of the Tritiya Adhyaya. And therefore he is now saying, Yena ikhyate, that through which you see. It's not the eyes, there is some superior faculty. Shrunoti idam, and then you listen to it. Jigrati, that you smell. Vyakaroti, you're able to give expression to some feelings. Swadu, aswadu, vijanati, then you know this is tasty, it's not so tasty. That is known as tat pragyanam udiritam. Yeah. Now we will go into the tikas and we'll make sense of it. Brahmavadinaha mumukshavaha parishadi tattvam vicharam kurvantaha. So in parishadi means in parishad there is a meeting, they're sitting and they're discussing, they're doing what is called in corporate sector group work. Yeah, so there is a group leader and there is a group work happening. Tattvam vicharam, understanding what is that atma. Kurbantaha, they're doing Atmana Swarupam Prati Mitho Aprichan. They're asking each other. What are they asking? Koyam Atma Iti Vayam Upasmahe. Which is that Atma that we should meditate on? Katarasa Atma Iti. And which is that Atma? This is two sentences taken directly from Sankara Bhashya. Vidyati hi tatra prashnavakashaha. There must be a context as to why this question is raised. Avakasha tathahi. Now, what is that avakasha? Nitya Suddha Buddha Mukta Swabhava Nirupadika Atma iti Nigamanta Vakyehi Bodhyate. What is the Atma like? It's mentioned very clearly that nature of the Atma is Nitya Suddha Buddha Mukta Swabhava. We are Nitya Suddha Buddha Mukta Swabhava. Just imagine, there must be some, you must have seen students in the hostels And there are some students who are little having this bragging nature, and they would say, we have so much this, that, this, that. My dad was this, my grandpa was this, and I have so much land and this and that in the hostel. Then he lands up at your table on one fine evening. He says, "Yeah, this is an important thing to do. And can you lend me some money?" I said, "Why? You're so rich, no? I'm a middle class guy. How can I lend you money?" And same way, if Vedanta says Nitya Suddha Buddha Mukta Swabhava Nirupadhiga Atma, all of us are Atma, right? And then what is our nature? Nitya Suddha Buddha Mukta Swabhava. Somebody will ask, "Oh, what makes you so miserable if this is you?" But this is what is mentioned about Atma, Nigamanta. Nigama is, Veda. Nigamanta Vakyehi, by the statements. Nigamanta means Vedanta Vakyehi Bodhyate, that what is explained. Pratidinam anubhuyate asmat pratyaya gochara चक्षुरादि इंद्रिय उपाधि कार्यकरण संकीर्णः कश्चित् चेतनात्मक आत्म अभिधानः. And he's saying this is experienced by all of us. What is that? Asmat prachaya gochara. Whenever you say asmat, I, what is the vishaya of that? You are referring to something. When you say I, you are referring to something. Are you referring to your body? Are you referring to your mind? Are we referring to our emotions or anything? Or indriya? What is that we are referring to? Pratidinam anubhuyate asmat pratyaya gocharaha. And then what? Chakshuradi indriya upadhi. And then through the eyes you see, through the nose you smell, and all that. Upadhi karya karana shankirnaha kaschit chetanatmaka atmavidhanaha. They are limited by this karya karana shankirna. Karya karana sanghata, which is the body mind complex. This is kind of a cage for the self. The self is like ghatakasha. There is a particular restricting principle called ghata, within which the cosmic space seems to be caged, captured in that. Kaschit chetanatmaka atmavidhana, but that is consciousness that we are referring to. Tayar abhedo vedova. Now that is Abhedatmaka or Vedatmaka, because there are two Upanishadic statements. One enters through top, the other one enters through the down. Anye ko atra asmavihi upasya iti parishadi vichare prasakti. And then this context we saw in the Bhashya, it's not discussed in detail here. So there is saying, who is the one that we should meditate on? Evam sthite, when the argument heats up, nishitam atma swarupam eva, then definitely we must meditate on the Atma Swarupa, and that must be Pragyana Sabda Videyam Ityaha Yena iti. That Atma verily should be Pragyana. Remember, Jnana and Pragyana. Jnana is that consciousness, knowing, in a very simple sense. Pragyana is which is much superior, much subtler, which is the underlying principle for all knowing that happens. Jnana and Pragya. Sometimes we translate that as wisdom. It's not wisdom. It is that superlative consciousness. It's immanent as well as transcendent, which goes beyond what seems to be functional in our cognitive activities. But what watches this process of cognition? We know, but there is some consciousness which enables us to say, I know this. So your knowing is also observed by something inside. What is that? That pragyanam is referring. That must be Atma, and we must meditate on it. Evam sthite nishitam atma swarupam eva pragyana savada avideyam ityaha. Therefore, the Atma should be avideya, means a word through which you can express something that is through avidhana vritti, avida vritti, so avideya. येन चक्षुर मार्ग निर्गता अंतकरण वृत्ति उपहितेन चैतन्येन इदं चक्षु विषयं रूपमिच्छते पश्यति पुरुषः इति शेषः. Now this is the Vedantic theory of cognition. What is the Vedantic theory of cognition, and how is it different from the Nyaya theory of cognition? Let me very briefly capture for you. The Nyaya theory says that if you are seeing this pen, the pen, you are seeing this. So there is Vishaya Indriya Sanyoga, the eyes go reach there. Then there is Indriya Mana Sanyoga, the mind connects with this Indriya. Indriya is not my physical eyes, it is the Indriya Devata, Sukshma Tattva, and it is Atindriya. The seeing faculty cannot be seen, it's Atindriya. Then there is Mana is Anuparimana. So there is Indriya Manasa Yoga, then there is Atma Manasa Yoga, and when Atma Manasa Yoga happens, the pen knowledge, Yathartha Jnana, the Kalama Jnana now blossoms in my Atma. Atma is Jadatmaka, but because of Jnana, it bleeps. And in that moment is, that is the Chetana Bhava of the Atma. It's Vibhu Padartha, but it's a Dravya, it is an object. It's a Bhu Padartha. Therefore, it stays there. That is what they are trying to say. So, there are two distinctions, fundamental distinction between the Nyaya view of mind or the manas and the Vedantic view of the mana or the mind. For the Nyayikas, the mind is Anuparimana. Vedanta says you are getting a little confused because if it's Anuparimana, it's like a very tiny particle. How you are having Sukha Dukha Buddhi, Sukha Dukha Anubhava, one through a particle, you cannot have that, which is spread along the whole body, across the body. And number one, if you are saying mana is the Indriya Janyatva through the, and because manas is an Indriya for them, they say that if you do not accept mana is Atindriya, mana is Indriya, how will you have Sukha Dukha Upalabdhi? Because your eyes and ears and all cannot touch your Sukha Dukha Anubhava. It's only through the mind can you know. That is their argument. The Vedanti refutes. For Vedanti, mana is actually antakarana and jnana is this vritti is antakarana parinama. How they explain it? You have the mana here. Pramatri Chaitanya is antakarana avachinna Chaitanya. Avachinar upahita. So there is a upadhi. I will explain. And then what happens is that pure consciousness now tuned with a certain adjunct. That adjunct is called antakarana. And then it travels outside through the window of the jnanendriyas or karmendriya, whatever. It travels outside. And then it will go and there is a pen. It will envelop that pen. There is kalamakara vritti. Kalamakara vritti means antakarana parinama. It envelops it and takes that form. Remember, that mana takes this form. So then what happens? It becomes Vrityavachinna Chaitanya, is called Pramana Chaitanya. The knower self is called Pramatri Chaitanya. Chaitanya is Ekameva. So this Pramatri Chaitanya is knowing self. Pramana Chaitanya is the cognition self, so to say, cognition modal consciousness, and then it goes and envelops. Kalamakara Vrityavachinnam Chaitanyam, Vishayavachinna. This kalama is what? This is also consciousness. It's called Vishayavachinna Chaitanyam. The consciousness which has taken the form of an object of knowledge. Now it goes and envelops there, and the Vishayavachinna Chaitanya and the Vrityavachinna Chaitanya, the modal consciousness and that object consciousness, they get enveloped, they become one. You cannot distinguish. Then that particular thing gets reflected in the Chidabhasha, that is the Phala-vyapti. This is Vritti Vyapti in their language. When it gets reflected in the mirror of your Chidabhasha, you know, directly you don't see the pen, you see its reflection there. This is a complicated theory about cognition in Vedanta. That is what he's explaining. And why we have such a complicated theory? No, for a very noble purpose. What is that noble purpose? The purpose is, in fact, to explain how consciousness remains one, and yet we are able to explain the process of knowing, and the object of knowledge. In order to make these things possible, we have this theory of cognition. This is what he's explaining. Yena pragyanena, by that consciousness. Chakshur marga nirgata. They give a beautiful example. So there is a water body. There is a pump set to pull water up. Lift irrigation, minor lift irrigation. You pull the water up, and then there is a thin channel through which this water flows, and that is the indriya, that is the window. The Gyanendriya, as the water flows out, takes that shape. Then it goes, there is a rectangular shape plot on which you are raising some kitchen. You are raising a kitchen garden. The water goes there, and then it has that chatuskonakara vritti, means parinama. Then the water takes the form of that rectangular space. The water looks like a rectangular object. That is that vritti, that is that parinama, vishayakara vritti. And then that is reflected in the mind. Yeah. So now come to the drashtantika. The prakarana which we are discussing means our consciousness goes, take the form of the object, gets reflected here, and then we know the object. He's now putting, look at the language in using Chakyu Marga Nirgata, means the water channel, water goes. Antagana Vritti Upahitena Chaitanyena Idam Chakyur Vishayam Rupam Ikshate. There is some particular object, white, blue, red color sari, then you know, then you have that sari akara vritti through which that gets reflected, you know. Purusha iti shesha. Yena, so then he will repeat it for all Gyanendriyas. So there is nothing special, it's very easy to understand. Yena sotrindriya marga nirgata antakarana vritti prati bimbitena. That same thing. Sotrindriya is a different kind of a, sense organ. It goes. And there is some rock music which is playing, and you listen to that song. Then that particular Ganakara vritti happens, and that comes back and gets reflected. Sotrindriya marga nirgata antakarana vritti pratibimbitena chaitanyena tad vishayam sabdam shrunoti, and that is how you apprehend. Yena, then you think about your ability to smell. Jnanendriya samprukta antakarana vritti pratibimbita chaitanyena tad vishayam gandham. Then the smell is sandalwood, it's a particular, it's mogra or lavender, you're getting that smell. Jigrati. Tatha eva yena, then he's picking up a karmendriya. Vagindriya vyaprita antakarana vritti pratifalitena tena eva vyakaruti sambhasanadikam nirvartayati. Then you are able to speak, you give a speech, you sing, you do bhajan, whatever. Through, then look at this, the antakarana is taking different forms and different things are happening through this. Yena, then he's talking about your taste. Yena juhendriya vyaprita antakarana vritti pratibimbitena tena eva swad aswadu vijanati. Remember, yena is not referring to the tongue. That by virtue of which your tongue is able to taste anything. It's all referring to that prajnanam that we have to keep in mind. Yena, that by dint of which, by virtue of which, you have this jiva indriya vyapruta antakarana vritti pratibimbitena. It goes and then it comes and there is reflection in the chidabhasa, and you know this is tasty or not so tasty. Atra anukta samuchayakena cha sabdena. There is cha sabda. It covers the remaining sense organs not mentioned here. And what are they? Tvaka padadi vahir indriya vrittinam antakaranam antakarana manobuddhi vrittinam. So the vrittis and vikaras could be outside or inside. So the manobuddhi, so there could be some internal organs like the sukha dukkha adi. These are also vrittis, vikaras are happening inside, and there are certain things happening outside. So sangrahena, summarily, tad upahita chaitanyena. So all the vikaras, these are kind of upadhis. Now, what is the difference in Vedanta between upadhi and visheshana? You have to understand it. That you see, visheshana, if you say red flower, the redness and flower are organically linked. It's a red flower. So the Vedanti gives a definition. Vidyamanatve sati karya anvayatve sati itara vyavartakam. So there is first what? Karya anvaya. There is organic link between redness and that flower. Number two, what? Vidyamanatve sati. That redness is for, rakta. Nilotvala, nilata is there. Nilatva is there. Yeah. It's Vidyamana. And then Itara Vyavartakam, it distinguishes that flower from all other flowers, which may be of different other colors. Upadhi is Vidyamana, but not Karyanvaya. Vidyamanatve sati, Karya Ananvayatve sati, Itara Vyavartakam, which is called Upadhi. What is the example? So you have a crystal. Now, what is a crystal? It's basically, quartz. So you have a crystal, and then you bring a red flower, it looks red. Green flower, it looks green. Blue flower, it looks blue. Does it have any color of its own? No. That means there is no karyanvaya. Done? But the colors appear as if they are there, therefore they are vidyamana. Are they itara vyavartaka? Yes, they are itara vyavartaka. Because when it looks blue, you can distinguish that particular thing. Actually, some other, experts say anya bodhakatvam. So, instead of saying itara vyavartakatvam, yeah, anyatha bodhakatvam. So it tells you actually it's not having that red color. The crystal appears as blue because of that upadhi. Now let's come to Vedanta to make sense of it. He's saying Vritti Upahita Chaitanya. Why? Chaitanya is Nirupadika, doesn't have name and form, but it assumes name and form. What kind of names and form? That this is knowledge of X. This is the knower. These are all upadhis and the pure consciousness. Tat Vishaya, then he's explaining Atra Anukta Samuchayakena Cha Savdena Tvak Padadi Bahiri Indriya Brittinam Antakaranam Anubuddhi Brittinam Cha. All the external sense organs, okay, and action organs, and then internal Antakarana, the Sangrahina Tad Upahita Chaitanyena. So you have that Chaitanya consciousness, now it takes the upadhi of the eyes, then it becomes a seeing consciousness, listening consciousness. They are all Upahita Chaitanyas, the Pramatri Chaitanya. And then it comes back and it's reflected in the Chidavasa. Upahita Chaitanyena Tattad Vishaya Avivyanjanam Uktam Bhavati. Then what are the objects of it? A particular music, a particular picture, a particular smell. They all become object of our knowledge. They become evident as our knowledge. This particular process. Sandhi Bahubhyo Vritteyaha Manabuddhi Veda Bhinna Antagaranasya. And there are Vrittayaha means what? Many, many vikaras, many, many parinamas, many, many ways in which our mind assumes a lot of form. Sometimes we think about X, sometimes we think about Y. No? We say, I'm very depressed today because a friend called you up and he said that he lost somebody. You were in some mild sadness in you. There's some sadness. Somebody tells his daughter has got a gold medal and she's going to join a top university. You feel happy. Your friend's daughter is like your daughter. You feel good. You wish her very well. Now, these are different kind of parinamas. But the consciousness, because of our faulty way of reasoning, we say, I am sukhi, I am dukhi. I am happy, I am sad. It's not you who is sad. These are different forms your antakarana is assuming. And he's saying, Sangyanena Samyak Vastu Swarupam Janati. Sangyanena, through the consciousness. Then, it's going to come in the next. So I'll just swiftly go to that, or so in the next verse, but I will just go back and we will come back again. Just give me 1 second. I'll unshare this and we'll go to that the original Upanishad, and I'll bring you back. Give me 1 second. The text. Now this is the first verse, we have done it. Now look at the verse number 2. Yad etad hridayam manasya etat sangyanam agyanam vigyanam pragyanam medha drishtir dhritir matir manisha jyotihi smritihi sankalapah kratuhu asuhu kamo vasha iti sarvanirvetani pragyanasya namadheyani bhavanti. That with which or through which we know, we hear, we smell, all that we did, that is pragyana. Now somebody will say, okay, now define it well. He's saying, I'll tell you. Now the Shruti says, Yad etad hridayam manasya etat. That is verily. And then, the Bhashyakar is explaining. These are all the Sangyanam, Ajnanam, giving order, Vijnanam, understanding, intellect, Prajnanam, Medha, Drishtihi, Dhriti. All these are different ways to point at that Prajnanam. That is explaining here beautifully. King punaha tad ekam anekada bhinnam karanamiti uchyate. What is that? Jiske dwara the eye sees, ear, and these are all upadhis of the same Chaitanya. How that happens, explain to me. Yad uktam purastat prajanam reto hridayam hridayasya reto manaha manasa shrashta apasya varunasya हृदयात् मनो मनसश्चन्द्रमा तद एव एतत् हृदयं मनश्च एकम एव तद अनेकधा. Then he's saying, already it has been said, prajanam reto hridayam. Reta is actually semen, but he's saying that foundation, the source of whatever they are, hridayam, hridayasya reto manaha. And then what is the reta means here now? Causal factor. He's saying prajanam reto hridayam and hridayasya reto manaha. And that what is the root of this? Root of it. At the root of it is manas, and the manasa srasta apasya varunasya hridayat mano manasaschandramaha tad eva etad hridayam manasya ekam eva anekatha. So all this is trying to say, this is a Srishti Prakriya. There are different Prakriyas, and in different Upanishads, these are stories. The Vedanti doesn't take any of these descriptions as fundamentally real. These are in order for us to understand that what appears as a reality is essentially a matter of our own imagination. What is absolutely real is actually the Brahman, not the storyline about how these all came to, manifestation. These manifestations of different things and the ways in which they have manifested, there is nothing fundamental about them, nothing foundational about them. This is just to explain how things have come. But the purpose of this explanation is, in fact, to take us back to the source consciousness, the pure supreme consciousness, which alone is real. All these are ephemeral. They appear and they disappear. Etena antakarnena ekena chaturbhute चक्षुर्भूतेन रूपं पश्यति श्रोत्रभूतेन शृणोति घ्राणभूतेन जिघ्रति वाग्भूतेन वदति जिह्वाभूतेन रसयति स्वेन एव विकल्पान् विकल्पनारूपेण मनसा संकल्पयति हृदय रूपेण अध्यवस्यति. Now these are all we have already discussed. Ekena antakarnena ekena Chakshurabhutena Rupam Pashyati, that particular consciousness that sees, it listens, it smells, it speaks, it tastes, and then with itself, it does. Manasa Sankalpayati, I'll do this, I'll do that. Hridaya Rupena Adhyavasyati, and then that, with the help of that Vijnanamaya Kosha, that intellect, it decides and then it, holds on to something. Tasmad Sarva Karana Vishaya Vyaparakam Ekamidam Karanam Sarva Upalabdhyartham Upalabduhu. So for everything there is a particular Upalabdha. There is a one which gets it. Tathacha Kausatakinam Pragyaya Vacham Samaruhya Vacha Sarvani Namani Apnoti Pragyaya Chakshu Samaruhya Chakshusha Sarvani Rupmani Apnoti. The Kausatika Upanishad, that Pragyana thing, Pragya word also comes there. He's quoting from there. And then Vajasaniya in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Manasa hi eva pasyati, Manasa shunoti, Hridena hi rupani vijanati. Now look at these three different ways of referring to an underlying consciousness, an underlying faculty, an underlying reality, with the help of which we see, we hear. Brihadaranyaka says, with the mind they hear, they hear. Now the mana here is now referring to that underlying consciousness. Similarly, the Kaushatiki the Upanishad is again talking about an underlying reality with which, if you say the word, the tongue is able to say a lot of things, yeah, and then you see everything. They are all referring to a transcendental principle of the consciousness, which is beneath, or which is the underlying principle, with help of which the apparent functional or phenomenal things are happening. Yeah, that is what. Yo vai prana sa prajna, yo vai prajna sa prana, Kaushatiga Upanishad. That prajna alone is prana, that means the life principle. You see, what happens is these are all adhyaropa apavada. In upasana, you don't have Suddha Brahma. It is Sopadhika Brahma. Because Suddha Brahma, you don't meditate on that. You do only vichara. Because to meditate on something, you should be able to objectify it. But it's not possible to objectify Shuddha Brahma. So, because there is some kind of a Veda between the Dheya Vastu and the Dhyata, the meditator and the objective meditation. So, whenever we talk about meditation, there is something on which we are meditating. And here, therefore, these are all about upasanas. There is some upadhi. So, this pragyanam Brahma is, in ultimate sense, pragya is not directly Brahma, but we will understand how that is with a bit of upadhi that is mentioned. Ultimately, we'll go beyond and then reach where we will not be able to search for anymore any underlying or any transcendental reality. We talk about a transcendental reality for explaining each level of happening, but then there is a level where there is no other underlying principle, there is no other transcendental principle to explain that reality. We go to a point where there is no observer other than that reality. All other lower levels, there is a one observing reality beyond that particular level of reality, or and then that ultimate thing is Suddha Brahma, where there is no definition whatever, there is no upadhis. Iti Brahmanam. Karna Sanghati Rupasya Prana iti avochama prana sambadadau tasmad यत पद्भ्याम प्रापद्यत तद ब्रह्म तद उपलब्धुः उपलब्धि कारणत्वेन गुणभूतत्वात् न एव तद वस्तु ब्रह्म उपास्य आत्मा भवितुम अर्हति. We have already discussed it, because that through which you know everything, that particular means cannot be atma, must be something. Parishesha, therefore, yasya upalabdhuhu उपलब्ध्यर्थाः एतस्य हृदयमनुरूपस्य कर्णस्य वृत्तयः वक्ष्यमाणाः स उपलब्धा उपास्य. That which knows is upasya. Upalabdhi, upalabdhi karnas, then there is upalabdhi, there is a upalabdha. And that underlying principle, that one which knows, these are all processes of knowing happening. Eye doesn't know. That which knows with the help of the eyes, that is way we are going, inwards and inwards. Upasya atma nah asmakam bhavitum aratiti nishyam kritavantah. And then, now this is here. Ta ima uchante. What is that? Tad antakarna upadhistasya upalabdhuhu pragyana rupasya brahmanaha upalabdhyartha ya antakarna vrittayaha vahyantaravarti vishaya vishaya sa ima uchyate. Now, this is the introduction to this particular mantra. What is it? He's explaining. Look here. That pragyana rupasya brahmana, that pragyana rupak brahman, of him, upalabdhyartha yaha antakarna vritteyaha, and there you have antakarna vrittis, parinamas, bahya antaravati vishaya vishayaha. And there are so many objects we are able to know with the help of these gyanendriyas and karmendriyas. Ta ima uchyante, I'm explaining. Sangyanam, Sangyaptihi, Chetana Bhava. Different names through which we are trying to make sense of Prajnana. One is Sangyana, Sangyapti, awareness, Chetana Bhava. Ajnanam, Ajnaptihi, Ishvara Bhava, that ability to direct things. Vijnanam, Kaladi Parigyanam, that have intellectual power to know. This is painting, this is art, this is science, this is IT, all that. Prajnanam, Pragyaptihi, Prajnata, that Prajnanam of that consciousness. These are all upadhis. Prajnanam, Pragyati, Prajnata. Medha, Grantha, Dharana, Samarthya. Medha is what? Ability to remember. Hold on to this. Drishtihi, Indriya Dvara, Sarva Vishya Upanavadhi. Drishti, that vision power you have, that is also one. Upadhi, Indriya Dvara, Sarva Vishya Upanavadhi. Then there is Drishti, there is Drashta. Dhritihi, that what is that? Patience. Dharanam, Avasannanam, Sarya Indriyanam, Jaya Uttam Manam Bhavati. Sometimes you're feeling very sleepy and this and that, and there is a presentation after 20 minutes. What do? You try to have a black coffee and you try to cheer yourself up. You know that dharya, I have to wait for another 1 hour. Let the meeting be over, I'll go home, I'll sleep. Dhritya Sariram Udvahanti iti cha itihi vadanti. And therefore, Dhritya Sariram Udvahanti. With patience you carry it. Itihi vadanti. Matihi mananam. Matihi means what? Ability to reflect. Mananam. Manisha tatra swatyantra. Manisha, it's that sharpness, your intelligence. Manisha tatra swatyantram. Jutihi chetasaha rujidadiduhu rujadi dukhitva bhavaha juti. Sometimes you are having a bit of, mental depression or a bit of Down syndrome, a bit of not being feeling so happy. Smritihi smaranam, then you remember. Sankalpaha sukla krishna adi bhavena sankalpanam rupadinam, and then you do sankalpa. I want to wear this, I want to do that, and this and that. Kratuhu adhyavasaya. Kratuhu is actually anusthana of the Yajnasana. Here, Kratuhu means adhyavasaya. You have, endure, you want to achieve something. Ashuhu prananadi jivana kriya nimittaha vrittihi. Ashuhu, that you have that different kinds of, you smell, you inhale, you exhale, all that happening. Kamaha asangnihita vishyakanksha trishna. Then what you do not have, then you want to think, you have that craving. Vasaha stri Vyatikaradi Abhilasha. Vasaha means what? Vasikara here is referring to. Vyatikara is that, that copulation. Is it a desire for have conjugal relationship with somebody? Ityevam adya antakarana vrityaha upalabdhuhu upalabdhi arthatvat. So all these are the parinamas, are modifications of the consciousness. And why do they happen? Because there is this upalabdha inside. Upalabdhi arthatvat, because he wants to have all these. Okay? So he's saying Sabdatvad Suddha Pragyana Rupasya Brahmana Upadhi Bhutaha. The Pragyana, that Brahman, Pragyana, Brahma means there is that pure consciousness. These are upadhis. It's taking different kinds of forms. Tad upadhi janita gunanamadhyani sangyanadini. Upadhi janita is a result of that color, red color flower, blue color flower comes close to that crystal, and that color of the crystal changes, apparently, not really. Similarly, upadhi janita gunanamadhyani sangyanadini sarvani eva etani pragyapti matrasya pragyanasya namadhyani. These are different names attributed to that pragyanam, which doesn't have any name, which doesn't have any form. It's pure consciousness. Bhavanti na swataha sakshat. The crystal doesn't have any color of its own, it assumes. Now, it's easy for us to make sense of why we say, I'm very wise, I'm so stupid, I'm so angry, I'm so happy, I'm so sad. These are all superimpositions on our consciousness. Tatha chukcham pranan eva prano nama bhavati. Because we smell, because we breathe, and then we call ourselves, we are living. Now, we will come back to our text, which we're doing. Because this is, Bhasha, I thought, let's go, not rush through it, but we will pick up the Upanishad, then come back wherever there is a requirement. So now he's explaining the same thing. It will become very easy. Santi bahuvyo Vritya mana buddhi veda bhinnantakarnasya, different forms it assumes. Sangyanena, that sangyamti is mentioned. Samyak vastu rupam janati sangyamti. Ajnanena ajnapayati vrityadin. then you ability, that ishitva, that you do it, do that. Vijnanena asesha kala kaushalam atanoti, and we know vijnana sabda, vijnapti, that we know different kala kaushala, everything. Prajnanena sastrartha avagamena nava unmesham akalayati, different kinds of things. We make sense of it. Oh, this is a new theory, this is a new application, this is a new tool, let's use it. Prajnanena, through intelligence. Tada arthan avagatan medhaya dharayati. Once you know, should you forget? No, hold on, then we go forward. Apadi, in moments of danger. Dhritya indriyani uttam bhayati, because there's a danger. So you are driving and you go to a dangerous lane. So you become extra conscious. Matya sukshman rajaniti vishayan alochayati. This is very stupid to discuss politics, but okay, economics, politics, whatever, very difficult things you are doing, alochana. Tatra manishaya pradarshayati swatantriyam, and then your willpower, your intelligence, then you show your independence. I do it. And vidya, fear. Prapta avasareshu karyeshu udvignatam apnoti. Sometimes you have this anxiety when you are doing this. Smritya anubhuta purvam vastu smriti patham anayati. Then through memory, whatever you have already experienced, you bring it to your consciousness. कर्तव्येषु संकल्पेन साधना सामग्री सम्यक परिकल्प्य तद अवश्य कर्तव्यतायाम व्यवसायी भवति. Okay, so endurance that I was mentioning, then vyavasayi bhavati. Sadhana samagri parikalpya, you, okay, I have to do this, you make a plan, then you execute it. And then pranavayu sanchalanena praniti, that prana is mentioned, that you have inhaling and exhaling everything. Kamana akankshate, kama means kamena akankshate, you want, you crave. Yati kamya vishaya vashyadam, and then once you do kamana, the kamya vishaya, and that he mentioned there here, that vyatikara thing, that you also have desire, then you want to fulfill it, you get enslaved by it. Evam सात्विका राजस तामशान मनोविकारान अन्यांश. So there is sattvika vikara, there is rajasika vikara, and there is tamashika vikara. Anyangsha vahya vishayan, external objects. Yacha chaitanyam abhivyanjayati, that objects which this consciousness gives expression to. Tat chaitanyam atma rupam, that consciousness is swarupatha atma eva. Sanjnanam ajnanam vijnanam prajnanam medha दृष्टि वृत्ति मतिर मनीषा ज्योति स्मृति संकल्प क्रतुः अशुः कामो वश इति सर्वाणि एतानि प्रज्ञानस्य नामधेयानि भवन्ति इति. Now, because we have already discussed it at length, that was the purpose of going there, because here it is not explained in detail. Prakrishta jnana rupatvat. Now remember, jnana is simple. Pragyana is prakrishta jnana rupatvat. It's superior, transcendental, more underlying and subtler. Jnana rupatat prajnanam iti udiritam. Therefore, it is referred to as prajnanam. Udiritam means what? Uktam bhavati. It is stated. अत्र ऐतिरीय अंतर्गतः कोयम आत्मा इति वयम उपासमहे इत्यादि मंत्रवर्णः समीक्षितव्यः. So you better read and do a bit of samiksha. That is how we took a detour and we went and did it, and then we'll again reassemble on Thursday to take it forward. So we will do the Shanti mantras. And Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. ओम शांति शांति शांति. श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः. हरि ओम तत्सत्. It's okay. See you on Thursday and reassemble